Hey guys, today I'm gonna quickly show you how to create a cross-platform Xamarin app using Visual Studios for Mac. So first we select New Project, then here's a list of the different things we can create, but for now we just want to create a multi-platform Xamarin app. We're gonna use Xamarin Forms, so the UI, we can just write that once and have it apply to both, and we'll do a regular Forms app in C#. So you hit Next, you type in your app name, we'll call this Sample App. I'm leaving the organization identifier as that. We're targeting Android and iOS, and there will be no mobile backend for this example. Hit next. We'll leave the project name the same, but we'll name the solution just so you can clearly see that this is the solution and this is the project. It's going in my projects directory. We're creating a project directory inside the solution. We're using Git, and we're going to add a .gitignore. Hit create. Then it takes a few seconds. And on the left, you'll see there's the solution, and it has three projects: sample app, sampleapp.droid, and sampleapp.ios. So starting with sampleapp.ios, this is the iOS specific files for Xamarin. So you'll see here things like the app delegate. If I double click, um, the app delegate file, the entitlements, plist. So if you want to use Siri or Apple Pay or any iOS specific things, you'll need to check it in the entitlements. We have the info plist, and this has a lot of the app metadata, like the application name, what you see on the phone, the bundle identifier, what version what version your app is in, stuff for signing, and there's also, you can specify here what versions you want to target. You can also specify if you want it for iPhone, iPad, or both. We'll leave that universal. We can say what orientations we want to support. By default, it supports portrait and both landscapes, but not upside down, and a couple of other options. And an initial storyboard and main.cs, as well as in the resources, a couple of icons. On the Android side, we have very similar things. We have the main activity, we have some assets folder, and in the properties here, we have the Android manifest, which is just like the info.plist. It's the application's metadata, so you can set the name here, the package name here, set icons, what version your app is in. Here we can target the lowest level of Android that our app should work on, and this is what version of Android we're currently developing for. And here is just like the entitlements.plist. You can check if you need GPS or Bluetooth or any phone specific thing so that your application has permission to use it. In resources, we have icons for different sizes, a few layout files, some values, and things like that, all Android specific. And finally, we have sample app. So this contains the UI and the code for both Android and iOS. So here, notice we have models, services, view models, and views. Xamarin likes to build things using the MVVM pattern. So using in our models, we just have an item with an ID, text, and description. In our view models, we have different view models that connects this model to the view. And in views, notice we have a couple of different views. If I open one of it, then we can see that this contains the XAML, and it's using Xamarin Forms. So on the right side here, we can see what it should look like if the previewer works, but right now it does not. And you can also check that on either Android or iOS. but it's not working right now, which is fine because we can also use the simulator. So notice up here, there's a play button that will build your application and launch it onto the simulator. This selects which project you want to build for either iOS or Android. If you had a unit test app, that would also show up. And we can also build it for either debug or release. And we can select which simulator we want. iPhone 8, iPhone 10, iPads. If you connect your device with USB, you'll also see that listed here. So right now, let's build for iOS. So this is the iOS simulator. And we can click on these buttons just like a real iOS phone. We can rotate it and tilt it if we want to test what it looks like on landscape or portrait. It installs the sample app and it automatically launches it for us. By default, this is what the default Forms app looks like. So it's mainly a table view controller containing a bunch of items. And there's two tabs, the Browse tab and the About tab. In the About tab, you can see there's a Xamarin icon, Xamarin logo, the name, what version, a little description, and here if you tap on the Learn More, it will bring you to Safari, going to xamarin.com. Click here to go back, and let's check out the Browse tab. In Browse, if you click on one of the items, you'll see it more description here. Click back to go back to this, and we can also add an item. So the text, we can type here. I can use my keyboard to type my item, and we can also modify the description. This is an item. I'll hit save, and you can see my item comes up here. So this is what it looks like for iPhone. Let's check it out for Android. I can't switch it out and use Android immediately. I have to actually stop debugging, switch to Android. I'll do debug, and I will use the default simulator selected for me right now, which is that. Hit play, then it builds. And while that's building, one thing I wanted to mention is that in the services, this contains the interface to our Datastore, which just lets us add, update, delete, and get item. But we also have two implementations. One is Cloud Datastore and one is Mock Datastore. In Cloud Datastore, it will actually go to a URL and hit a backend API to get items. And just for testing purposes, it also comes with a mock data store. So here's the items that we saw on screen. And it's all backed by a list of items. And Android takes a little while longer to build. So typically what happens in XAML is you have your XAML here. It's primarily XML. And you also have a code behind app.xaml.cs. Notice by default it uses this backend URL, but it also uses the mock data store. If I change it to false, it'll use the cloud data store and go to this URL. Okay, and the Android emulator launched. And this is what the Android version looks like. We'll bring up the iOS version to compare it. But this is the browse screen in the browse tab, and we also have the about tab. And it looks pretty much the same. There's a Xamarin icon. I can scroll down and click learn more, and with Android it opens up whether I should go to Chrome or just a web view browser. I don't want to do that right now, so let's go back and go back to browse. Here's your list view with all your items. If I select one, it'll go in. I can hit pack, I can hit add, and change the item name to my item. My item. This is an item. Hit save, and we see our item right there. One thing I wanted to note about the Android simulator is it contains all of these functions, which is just the power button, volume up, volume down. We can rotate it left or right, and you can see the UI changes and accommodates because we've specified that in the Android manifest, but it doesn't work upside down. We can take a screenshot by clicking here, and that will pop up on my desktop right here. The iOS simulator can do all the same things, by the way. If you want to magnify, you can choose a magnifying glass and go closer, or right click to go back. There's a back button, the home button, and the multitask button to see all the apps that are currently up and running. If you hit these three dots, you get a lot more options, including we can fake out a location for the GPS and make the phone think we're in another location just to test out different locations, like if you're developing Pokemon Go type of game. That's good for testing different areas. We can also change how the cellular network behaves. We can have a poor cellular strength or good cellular strength, different types of networks, and see, we can set it to roaming, test those different areas. We can change the battery level to see what your app can look like. If your app does something different when the battery's low, we can say if it's on the charger or not. See if it's not on the charger, that pops up just like the real Android, just like a real Android device. And we can also fake phone calls, just like that. I won't answer that, or send text messages. And lots of other things we can mess around with. But that's the primary things I wanted to show you about cross-platform development with Xamarin.